Good evening and welcome back to the Alex and Mo podcast. Tonight, Alex and I are hosting none other than the Maria Aguilar. Maria is a physical therapist in New Jersey, New York metropolitan area. So we are so pleased to have her here. She's gonna be enlightening both Alex and I and our audience about her work, uh, being an international PT, and some of the stuff that her and her spouse have been doing to assist other internationally educated physical therapists. Welcome, Maria, to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we do appreciate your time coming out, and then obviously to our fans, it's been a while since Mo and I uh, had an episode. I mean, we've been both very busy with some personal and professional endeavors. Myself have been trying to avoid hurricanes for the last couple of weeks. Um, Thankfully, we're doing well here, and we didn't really have any major damage, but it was a bit close for comfort. So thank you to everybody for continuing to support us. We've got a couple more things packed ready for you guys this season, and we'll break for holiday stuff, and then we'll come back ready to go again in the year. But thank you again to everybody for always following and subscribing. But now to Maria. I always like to kind of start off our shows just trying to get to know the person as an individual before we get into who they are professionally as physical therapists or whatever it is that they do. So, Maria, tell me a little bit about yourself and how you came to be a physical therapist and what that journey was like for you.
Sure. So, again, I'm Maria Aguila. Okay. I am married to Ben Aguila, a fellow physical therapist. We've actually been married for 22 years now. We were dating since college. That's actually how we met. We are in New Jersey and we have two kids. Christian is 15 and he's in high school, and Chelsea is 13, turning 30. So that's. You can just imagine what we're going through right now. That's also kind of like another storm, but yeah, a good one though. Always a welcome one. So we have actually been. I am only licensed in New Jersey, and we actually have our we are married, live at home together, and we also work together. We have our first practice in Jersey City, New Jersey, and we've been there for almost 15 years now. And we also have another practice in the Bronx. Um, and that's going to be, for um, a lot more details, like later on. But yes, we are in New Jersey, in New York area. So I immigrated to the United States not right after physical therapy graduation, but actually 3 years after physical therapy graduation. And right after PT graduation, I actually never worked in the Philippines, where I'm from, as a physical therapist. I worked for an international pharmaceutical company, GlaxoSmithKline, yes, for 3 years, the whole time that I was there. And I was in sales initially for about a year and a half, and then was promoted to be a marketing intern for another year or so before I migrated. So I kind of have a bit of a background, in sales and marketing, which I really am grateful for, because it really helped me navigate a lot of what I really had to go through, especially the first few years of living here, and like to this day.
Um, I'm glad you mentioned that sales experience because um, before I became a PT, I used to sell appliances at Home Depot,
Mhm.
and that experience definitely helped me in talking to customers and being better at selling stuff or getting them to see the value of taking a high ticket item so I could get a bigger commission. So, how did your experience being a sales agent help with your business?
Okay, so I'm not sure that it's actually my experience per se being a
Mm.
sales agent, but what I really value about my experience in working in the field is, how the company really instilled culture. like a workplace culture. And I was actually at the PPS private practice conference, like last week. I
Mhm.
presented with Karen Litzy, and that was actually part of our discussion, was actually marketing with and within the team, when you have a private practice and is working with a team. And what I've actually realized, in my comparison through the years, I was working in the Philippines for one company. In all those 3 years, I've stayed put, learned a lot. While in my first 3 years here in the United States, I actually counted, I jumped from one office to the other. I actually worked for 8 different offices, clinics within my first 3 years. And I honestly thought there was something seriously wrong with me. I'm like, why is this? And it's only like actually a few how many years later down the line, it's really just a few years ago that I realized, okay, that was what I couldn't point my finger to, is that although in the pharmaceutical company we were actually all from different educational backgrounds, we actually share the same culture once you started working for the company, and the company also knows how to take care of their people. In physical therapy, what I realized is that we may have the same educational background, but maybe because of the nature of their practices, we have a very fragmented culture, which is actually very, very challenging. Like small practice doesn't have to mean bad service, right? You could be a very small practice, but you could be a very organized. You could be giving world class service, even though you have a small practice. And that is really what I feel like what also pushed us to. I'm kind of getting ahead here, but really kind of like one of the things that pushed us to have our own business, um, is that I wanted to marry, like workplace culture, what it is like to be taken care of as an employee, as much as us employees taking care of the people and the patients around us.
So patient first is very important to you.
Oh yes, people first,
Yeah.
right? And people first means
Mhm.
that's either now that I am taking care of a team,
Mhm.
people actually starts with my team.
Mhm.
Only way that they can take care of patients properly if they also feel taken care of, you
Very
know.
true. Very true.
100%.
I I
So
I do that. I do believe that once your employee satisfaction translate into customer satisfaction, and I'm definitely seeing that with my team. So having the right culture is very important for longevity. Do you believe having the right culture too reduces the risk of burnout?
Oh yes, definitely. And I've thought about that a lot over the years, because
Mm-hmm.
as we know, right, even the studies show, even the stories, our collective stories say that burnout is a very real problem in our profession nowadays. But I also question, right, is it really burnout? Or
Mm-hmm.
is it really burnout, or moral injury really
Mm-hmm.
the one that's driving people out of our profession? Because when you say burnout is not necessarily just attributed to our work, right? Burnout could actually come from different facets of our lives that we may actually bring to work. So we
Mm-hmm.
may actually even pointing the wrong finger at work. I'm just saying, all different possibilities, because there's really, right, a lot of different reasons why we could be burnout, and we could be
Mm-hmm.
putting the different spaces in our lives, including work. But I guess, like, personally for me, from my experiences, I think it's really moral injury, because I believe physical therapy is great work. I feel privileged, to wake up and not even think about helping people, because the nature of our job is to actually help people. But when I'm not allowed to do that because of the constraints of my work and the way my work wants me to deliver my care, you know, then that's also a different story. So I think that we have to be a lot more deliberate, if we are going to label what it is that's actually really, I guess, bugging our profession, weighing us down, right? I think we have to be a little bit more deliberate in identifying what is it really um, stopping us, from, like the longevity of our careers, right? And staying put where we are. I think it's very unfortunate that there's, what was the statistics saying is that 1 out of 5 physical therapists are actually getting out of the profession. That's very high.
Yes, that's pretty high.
It's,
Um,
all know it's not easy to get in.
Tell me about it. Well, going back to how easy it is to get in. Like I was educated here in the US, but I came on a student visa. So after graduation, I had to register with the FSP stuff and go through the whole thing, and they wanted transcripts from high school, and I was like, "Why?" I mean, I've been educated here. I had to sign up for the, what is it called, the English foreign language English stuff,
Yeah,
and I'm
TOEFL.
like, English is my main language. It was just stupid to me. So what was the process like for you, actually being educated outside of the United States and trying to become a licensed physical therapist here?
Okay, so I graduated with my bachelor's in physical
Mhm.
therapy back in, I'm going to reveal my age, right? Back in 99. Well, I was in 10, okay? I was
Oh my
supposed to be
gosh.
older than this. No, it's in the Philippines in 99. I took my exams, okay, in
Okay, you know
2000.
that's when I started undergrad, right?
What is that?
That's when I started undergrad.
Okay, so it was in 99. I migrated in 2002 and then took my exams in 2003. But then I just wanted to share, in 2007, actually, Ben and I went back to take our transitional DPT. There was
Mhm.
no online learning yet at that time. It was then UMDNJ, University of Medicine and Dental, of New Jersey, which is now known as Rutgers University, here in Newark, New Jersey. So really, you see, even the label of internationally educated, right, is not even. I mean, it's not changeable, I guess. But just to clarify that, in reality, just like you, I'm actually also educated here, except that my entry level physical therapy degree was actually in the Philippines. So just like everybody else, I had to show through my credentials, which went through a thorough evaluation process that I had what we call academic equivalency, that whatever it was that was taken here by the students at that time, is also something that I had uh, equivalency in whatever courses that I took. And yes, I also took TOEFL, of course. I was applying in New Jersey, so it's test of English as foreign language. Although I have to say, I think that I do not necessarily disagree with actually TOEFL. At
Okay.
least for us who were internationally educated, which I think is really not your case. Like in a way, right? Because you took your physical therapy degree here. But for us, the reason why TOEFL was actually put in place is because they've also found out that a lot of foreign, international educated PTs, have a hard time passing the MPTE, and a factor actually is the language. I have to say, I learned English, like in school. It's an American educational system that I actually went through. We spoke in English, we read in English, and everything, in school. But the thing is, I also recognize that it's a gift, because not everyone is has a knack for and a skill for speaking in English, thinking in English, and reading in English. So, and as we know, if language is a barrier, that's going to be a very high barrier, not just for the sake of passing the examination, but I think more so when it comes to serving the population, which in this cases are actually going to be English speakers. Yeah, so I had to take, all that, pass the MPTE, and then finally get the license. um yeah, so I think to this day that is also still the process, but
Mhm.
the coursework tools, okay, are now different. because we are now in it was Vision 2020, which was achieved in 2015, right? All entry level physical therapies are now at the doctorate degree. So all of that has also changed for the internationally educated PTs.
Okay, so the entry level is DPT in most foreign countries as well?
No,
No. Okay.
most in most international in most countries, it's still, I would say, bachelor's and
Hmm.
some masters. Okay, but the coursework that we're using in the United States right now states that it that your internationally educated PTs actually have to have some equivalency, and
Okay.
also needs to have post baccalaureate degrees. So it doesn't have to be DPT, but at the very least, it needs to be a master's degree. And
Okay.
like a lot of countries, I mean, a lot of students at this point, especially with online learning now being possible, right, are taking their transitional DPT degrees online
Okay.
through American universities.
What was the process like for you? I mean, you said you dated yourself, right? So it wasn't a time where I would say information online was abundant, right? Like it was still probably early on. How did you navigate this transition, right? Because it's a big thing to say, hey, I'm going to go to PT school no matter where you go, in your case in the Philippines. But then it's to say, okay, I've accomplished this, but now I'm going to move to the United States. That process, I'm assuming, has to be kind of daunting and overwhelming. Just the idea of saying, I'm going to move to the United States, let alone I'm going to move to the United States, but I'm going to try to jump through all these hoops to make sure that what I have acquired in the Philippines or wherever, in your case, the Philippines, I can bring with me to help me get a jump start. What was that like? Like, how did you navigate those waters? Did you have somebody that you could kind of help that helped you? And then in turn, are you doing any of that for, therapists that you may know that are trying to do the same thing?
Okay, so I have to go back a little bit. So, Alex, when you were asking that, I'm thinking, whew, 20 something years ago. Help me refresh my memories. Okay, so I have to say, okay, so disclaimer, I did not migrate for the love of physical therapy profession. I actually migrated for the love of a physical therapist because, yes,
Thank
the
you, Ben.
and I've said it so many times, it's not going to change because it's the only version. Okay, I had a career back home, and I even had cold feet. But actually, and the only reason why really I am where I am now, the start of it was because when Ben asked me to marry him, that was actually when I realized, oh, I actually have to move there. And that was not part of my plan. It was a long distance relationship. Yes, like we didn't have no, there was internet, but our very first mails, I have to say, were like snail mails. Okay, the cell phone just started, so we spent a lot of money on that. And after about 3 years, I'm like, where's my investment going? Like so when we decided to, okay, get married, it was not a question of who was going where, so it had to be me. And like I said, I did have cold feet because I was also leaving a great opportunity, which I knew doesn't, come across every day at that point in my life. I was very young. So thankfully, that's the thing, is that as I'm trying to remember, it was also Ben, like, who helped me because he already navigated that uh, 3 years before when he actually first moved in California. He was there for almost 3 years, and that's actually where he first got his license. Unfortunately, he was in a bad faith employment at that time. So after we actually got married in California. I had a tourist visa, so I was able to go and visit him, which was also kind of like our trial period of, we haven't seen each other in a long time, or we still fit for each other and all that. So I was a runaway bride. because right after we got married, yes, after the day after we got married, I hopped on a plane and went home.
And I'll let you finish the story, but that brings up another question just on a cultural
Yeah, yeah.
standpoint. But
Yes, so I went back, and after I left, he was fired by his employer, and they said that like they didn't have the position for him, whatever it was, at that time. And so at that time, he was not in a good place because, unfortunately, like I said, it was a bad faith employer. What happened was, the employer was actually in cahoots with the lawyer. And even though he was already employed by them for almost 3 years, they never filed his green card. So he never really got, they never, even though, yes, they never filed his green card. So he never really got his status until he was forced to move. This is his story. Okay. He was forced to move to New York, start a new life over again, which honestly was a blessing in disguise because it wasn't until then, and he moved on to to a new lawyer, that he found out that all this time, all the lawyer had to do was actually file. And he had his, he went through the process, but that he actually had a status all that time. Unfortunately, that is not, 20 years later, that is also still something that is not unheard of. That still happens,
Mhm.
like to this
To
day.
a lot of people.
Why, yeah, we are big advocates, of protecting, hopefully, internationally educated PTs, from going through the same thing.
Yes, it's not just physical therapists. I've seen nurses, occupational therapists. A lot of international clinicians get exploited by employers who promise them, sponsorship to get a green card, and they get screwed over. Some of them feel trapped, that
Hmm.
they're beholden to these employers under poor working conditions and work culture, that, you have to stay if they do sponsor you for a while, but it can be tough being exploited in certain situations. So yes, we have to do our best to educate, especially those coming off a student visa as well and looking for sponsorship to be in the profession. Um, don't go work for stuff that you're not going to be happy for the next 3 to 4 years, because work-life balance matters and your mental health does matter too. So yeah.
Yes, well, I think that there's, yeah, we can have another, like I think that calls for a longer conversation. But Alex, you wanted to ask something
yeah,
earlier.
yeah. So you take off, right? To
He's gonna go back
well,
to.
no, because like I just like I'm and
I want to know the story too. So go ahead.
forgive my assumption here, but you take off and get married in California. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what did your parents say? Like, what was that like? Like,
Believe me, before I even left, there was already this, this whole big conversation on
yeah,
what's going to happen. They didn't. So what happened? Okay, so Ben and I have already been dating for 7 years by then. They have known him since we were in college, third year in college. And like I said, I actually did have, when Ben proposed to me, believe it or not, I was actually in a beautiful beach with my friends having a great time. And I guess I had one, two margaritas. I don't even remember. So when he asked me over the phone, I said yes. It was a beautiful sunset. My friends and I, like partied all night. That was the weekend. By Monday, and I was back in my cube, right? And that's what actually when it hit me, I'm gonna have to give up all of these. So, and my mom, my parents, my family also knew that I was gonna go and visit him, and there was already apprehension in that. Believe me, like of course, it's a very much more conservative culture, right? You're going to go visit this guy, da 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 da. What are you gonna do? But by then, Ben already also asked my family formally, uh, that we are, or we might actually get married. And then I backtracked, and then I told them, "Hold off." He said that, but I'm actually not sure. So everybody actually had to talk to me and ask me, like, what is the apprehension about? And honestly, I felt like, well, at that time, I was just turning 25. I honestly felt that 25, nowadays we say it's too young. I have my career. I'm going to have leave everything behind. So I really, and honestly, like I said, there was no internet. You don't get to talk to the person 24/7, like what you can do now. I am also very much aware that who left 3 years before may not actually even be the same person that I know from 3 years before, and vice versa, you know. And I just wanted to make sure that this is a lifelong commitment. Listen, in every relationship, business, otherwise, I always say, always have an exit strategy, but
Mm.
marriage is something that I feel like, yeah, not I feel like, I really
There's no exercise for that one.
have an exit strategy.
Well,
If
I'm
you're
glad.
going in, you're going to have to go in like a camel in the
Well, I'm glad you said that, right? Because as a married individual, happily married individual, um,
You better say that.
well, anybody that watches our show knows that's how it operates in this household. I mean, the fact that I'm on this show and get to do this with Mo is a tribute to my wife and what she does behind the scenes. But it's what you said about marriage and how it is different than probably most relationships, because if it's done properly, in my opinion, and for the right reasons, you don't need an exit strategy, right? Because it's an ongoing thing. Just like I feel like in business, right? If you're in business for the right reasons, that yes, you should have it as a last resort, right? But it shouldn't be the first thing you look to the minute you run into some sort of challenge.
Mhm.
So that kind of leads me to is what kind of challenges have you faced? Um, First, as an internationally educated therapist alone,
Mhm.
and then throw into the mix as a business owner, because I have to imagine, make assumptions that you probably had faced some of the same challenges, if not more and different ones, just because of your background.
Okay, so I actually have to throw in a couple of other, what I would say, intersectionality in the mix. Okay,
Mhm.
aside from my identity as an internationally educated PT, second, I'm also a woman, right? Third is I'm a young looking woman, although I'm not young, because that's ageism. A lot, and it's very real to me. It's very real
Yeah.
because it's not even, I think I got asked more about my age, if I'm actually old enough to practice physical therapy, than my education.
Hmm.
They never questioned me once I opened my mouth, but until I actually have that face-to-face, I mean, like that one-on-one talk with the patients, and I get introduced as, oh, she's going to be a physical therapist, it's always, like there's this, are you sure? And one patient actually told me, I'm so sorry, Maria, but I really thought, why is a high school student? What is a high school? And I looked younger 20 years ago. This is not necessarily now, okay? But so much more, so many years ago. So I have to throw in, kind of like a couple of other mixes. So, and one of the things that actually, um, kind of like, it was like the perfect storm, I have to say. It's a couple of other things that actually really led us even to going into business. Okay, because one is that, like I said, I was looking for that culture that I couldn't find somewhere else. And we Ben and I said, what, when we get the chance in the future, it was not our first intention. We did not go into physical therapy and practice physical therapy thinking, oh, we're going to be business owners. That was not even in the plan. But it was out of necessity that actually we had to do it, because after working for with a partner, okay, for about 5 years, I got pregnant, okay, and I got fired within the first month. Yes, yes. After,
Mhm.
and it was even illegal because I was still on maternity leave. And so to fire somebody on maternity leave, is definitely illegal. And when he actually talked to me about it, and I was crying and everything and saying this is actually harder than breaking up with a girlfriend, you know. And he even said it out loud that I know, Maria, you could sue me for this. But I also know that knowing you, you wouldn't.
What?
I'm thinking, what does it mean? You know?
See, sometimes people take advantage of your niceness. They think it's a weakness.
Yes. And so, yes, so that was, I think, a very difficult time, I have to say, in my life, because for the first time I was fired for doing the right thing. As far as I'm concerned, I was doing the right thing, because when I asked, I asked him, what if hypothetically, I'm not going back there, but hypothetically, even if I have a child, right, if I'm there consistently 3 times a week, would you take me back? I said, not really, because the other reason is, you wanted to take, we had different visions of how to run the company. And I already know that, because that was already kind of like a brewing thing. Again, that's the moral injury that I was talking about. So I already knew this was not going to be the place for me. So, but, it was also a very convenient reason, which is also very real, right? I was the full time therapist running the whole place. And all of a sudden, being a mom, right? If my kid gets sick, they know fully well I'm not going to be there. How do you navigate that? And like, I understand to a certain extent what it can do to a business, but instead of though of turning, I mean, I could have wallowed in it, and it did occur to me that if I wanted to pursue it, I can. But I also had to be realistic at that time of my life. I was actually 2 semesters, a semester away from graduating from our transitional DPT degree. So where am I going to put? I had no sleep. Where am I going to put my limited resources at that time? Meaning my energy, my time, and I'm like, I need to put it where it belongs, to this new baby, right? To this new responsibility. So that's actually when Ben and I said, okay, let's refocus, right? Concentrate on, I was going to focus for the first few months on raising our child, going back, I mean, finishing school. Those were the first 2 ones. And then right after graduation done, we also said, we also realized that if we really wanted to apply whatever we learned in our transitional DPT at that time, then we have to go into business and to have to go on our own practice. And so that's actually how it started. So there's a lot, there's a lot. And I think the other thing is, I think in clinical practice, really didn't feel the pushback as much. But I have to say, more so in my leadership roles, I think, is actually when I feel it a little bit more.
So prior to you guys going into business, was Ben just doing outpatient or was he
Yes, yes. We were
okay?
both employed in outpatient physical therapy offices at that time. Yes, we are. Yes, we were. And I think that what actually boggled our mind was, at that point, at some point, I have to say, was the volume. And we are talking about 2000, circa 2005, 2006, when reimbursement was at its peak, and I'm like, how much is enough? You know what I mean? Like, how many people more can we squeeze in a day? And that was also when we realized, what, that's the thing, is that our values, if it's not aligned with the values of the business owners, it's never going to be enough. We're very, I think we're very comfortable, but the thing is, we also know, I feel like we know, at the end of the day, I know my purpose. And it's not just to make loads of money in this world. you know
Understood, understood.
so that's the thing. I think, we're not just looking, we're, of course, we're looking to make a decent living, comfortable if you must, uh, but not at the expense, though, of you know taking out quality of care for our patients. Because like I just said, like I said in the conference just 2 weeks ago, um, marketing is a very misunderstood term in physical therapy. It's not a fancy, definition. At the very core of marketing is relationship building in whatever field. And I know there's a lot of us in physical therapy who are kind of like adverse to, oh, I'm not, don't want to do sales. I don't want to do marketing. But you know what? Whether you like it or not, you already are selling and you already are marketing, because once you build relationship, that right there is actually you building who you are. Either that could be trust, mistrust, confidence, lack of confidence to the person that you're actually talking with.
Very, very, very true. I'm glad you're sharing your journey because a lot of people have been through similar stuff and some have given up and walked away. But I'm glad you kept pursuing your passion. So thanks for sharing some of those tough parts of your life with us. So we appreciate it.
Maria,
So go ahead, Alex.
what was your motivation for getting the transitional DPT?
Okay, so at that time, okay, just before we already had, before I was fired, right? Um, because of the situations we were in, we kind of already generated the idea of what if we, like start our own practice, get into business ownership. And we backtracked because we realized, that was also the start of us, of the internet and reading APTA and knowing Vision 2020. Prior to that, it was not that, So we learned about Vision 2020, and I think it also took a lot of, it takes humility for us, for everyone to recognize, especially for internationally educated PTs, that although, and I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, okay, but I'm fine with it, okay, but although we may be academically equivalent, I think the fact that we grew up, we came from another culture, there's still so much to learn, when you get to the country. Okay. And at that time, like I said, the profession was already entering doctoring profession. So if we really wanted to serve the people who we're going to serve the best of our abilities, then it also means we got to level up first. That was also the era of evidence-based practice. If you're an internationally educated PT, studies show it takes what, 15 years, okay, before research in first world countries are actually translated into education and practice in other countries. And that's just a fact, right? And so, having said that, our education, I would say, and I'm saying back in 1999, wasn't necessarily evidence based practice. So, Ben and I, actually, we were like sponges when we went back to school, because I was very happy with, you know, uh, research, and just about everything, motor control, and I have to say, I am an ethics. I love ethics. I think that's actually when I really found myself and my voice when I took Dr. Kirsch, Nancy Kirsch's ethics class at Rutgers, because that's also when I realized, oh my goodness, there's actually actual terms for what it is that I was going through all those first few years that I was here. And they were called ethical dilemma, right? Ethical situations, ethical issues. Ethics was not a big part of physical therapy education from where I came from, whereas here it is definitely a big part. And now that I have been a practice owner for the last, what, almost 15 years, right? I have to say that this is where the work comes in, making people better, making them move, doing their treatment plans is actually not the hardest. That's, I think, the fun part. You got to ask my patients, you got to ask the staff at work. That's the fun stuff. The real work is actually when you have to model through um, issues, situations where you have to navigate your doctor of physical therapy hat versus your business person's hat, right? And again, justice, equity, and all that, that's all applied. But in reality, there's only so much resources that each of us are given. And I'm talking time, energy, money, space, right? And how do we actually proportion that, uh, given the limited resources, like I said, we had, and serve the people that we're supposed to serve?
So I want to touch on something. You being a female business owner, like, where do you find the time? Being a wife, a mom, physical therapist, business owner. It's like you're superwoman.
I am definitely. I wish I did. Honestly, I actually thought of wearing a Wonder Woman jacket earlier because I didn't know what to wear. I'm like, I told her, what if I wear this? It's like,
No, you can wear it. It's PT month, so you can wear a cape.
what? I'm like, just for the fun of it, because next week is going to be Halloween, and we actually dress up in at work every Halloween. There's always
Yeah.
something going on, so I'm like, oh, maybe I could. Anyway, um, I think it always starts with, honestly, it always starts with taking care of myself. Okay. And when I say taking care of myself, it's not the nails, it's not the hair color, but in really reminding myself of my purpose every day. And it means that before I can serve others around me, I have to go and look up. I have to go and pray. And I'm going to be brave, and not be ashamed about. I have to say, the only reason why I'm here is through the grace of God. And that is where I stand very firmly. What is that thing that is a big deal, kind of like nowadays, the imposter syndrome? I think we've actually talked about this in the Women's Leadership Summit. And do I go through imposter syndrome? I'm actually not sure that I really do. Maybe there's a tiny voice, but it's not an overwhelming factor in my brain and in my emotions, because I always go back to, you know, I am created not perfectly, but for a purpose. And it's not even my purpose, and it's not even for my own happiness, which still brings me happiness anyway. Like my kids would always, like, joke about my height. Mom, you're gonna be the youngest in the family. So I always tell my daughter, you know what, Chelsea, I'm created to be less than 5'2", because if mom were 5'6", trust me, maybe I'm not here. I would have been struggling somewhere. So I embrace all what is given to me in strengths and in limitations, and there's so much, like, freedom to that. A lot of people are going to say, oh, that's, like, you're oozing with confidence. And I would say it's not confidence in what I have, but in confidence on who is with me. And I know that will never be taken away. We were talking about earlier, kind of like I've shared, like, the ups and downs, but the very recent, kind of like, um, some people would say, losing situation, we call it learning situation.
Mhm.
uh, right now is that we actually open up, like I said, we opened up a practice in the Bronx. Um, and Alex, you said earlier that as long as, kind of like, your, what is that, the reason, right, is correct, you're going to succeed. I've actually learned not necessarily, because we had the right reason going to the Bronx. I had an option of actually putting up a practice where I live right now, a very, kind of like, a middle class, upper middle class, suburban area, years ago, before we actually went to the Bronx. But we did not, because I was thinking, oh, but it's already a well-to-do area. There's going to be a lot of physical therapists in the area who's going to serve the population. I want to go to the Bronx. We want to go to the Bronx because, just like Jersey City, it's underserved. We wanted to show the people in the community how it is to have quality service. So off to the Bronx we went. Okay. And October 31st, in a few days, we're actually be closed officially. We are actually closing down now. And that's because, you know, we cannot sustain. We
Mhm.
cannot sustain. unfortunately, what we've learned is that it is just a fact. There is just some areas right now in the country where quality of care is not really priority for the residents. And it's a bigger system. It's bigger than us, and we haven't won the lotto yet. So I don't have that well of bank account to actually pour into. We were able to do it for a few years,
Mm.
but we cannot sustain it. And the only reason that we could stay there is if we actually become a volume practice. If we did the math, we see 6 to 8 patients in an hour. But I'm like, but everybody else is already doing that. If we are going to do that and we're going to be one of those practices, I'd rather not. Plus, I also can't look at my staff in the eye and tell them I'm going to be working with you alongside you, seeing 6 to 8 patients an hour. I can't do that. So that's actually why we have to fold down. So there's a lot of reasons, like, and I think we started with a good mission. um but I think more than anything, it was a lesson learned, you
Well,
know
and that's exactly what I was going to say, right? Because you can go into anything, business, relationships, whatever it may be, with all of the right intentions and all of the right reasons, and ultimately, um I feel like I can confidently say this, that amongst us three, we know that we don't ultimately have the final say into what exactly is going to happen, right? We, through our faith and our beliefs, we know that we're we're put and chosen to do a certain thing, and then we give it our all, and then we hope for the best. And with that, there may be good, there may be bad. In your situation, some people may look at it as, yeah, this is such a bad thing for you and your company and your family or whatever. But I'm sure that in the midst of all of that, there's valuable lessons that you have learned that will help you grow personally, professionally, and give you, information and nuggets that you can now pour into your current practice to help continue that to excel, right? Because I'm a firm believer is that, we don't necessarily fail, we just fall forward, we learn, and we continue to build, because at the end of the day, what we're doing has already been set out for us. All we're doing is just kind of following the path, right? So
Definitely. Which is kind of, if you think about it, right? It just kind of like the antithesis of what we kind of sometimes set out to do in physical therapy, because we're very outcomes based.
Mhm.
I think about that a lot of times, like in clinical practice, we are so outcomes based. But how is that? But in real life, we also know outcomes. To me, I'm more of like, like focus on the process, because focusing on the outcome is actually a two-way street, right? You may actually underestimate the outcome, or you may overestimate the outcome, right? So I think regardless of the outcome, as long as you're treading in the right path, um, you should be okay, whatever happens.
yeah,
It's a redirection,
yeah,
but
I think.
it's timely because prior to us going live, I was sharing him some of the challenges that I'm going through right now with this. And you see, one he's a great motivator. A lot of people think that I motivate. Alex is pretty good at it too. But he was saying you find a way around it. You're creative. So I know you and Ben are gonna find a way to redirect stuff, and you never know where God is gonna lead you.
Right.
So the Bronx wasn't your Canaan, okay?
Yeah.
Somewhere else is, okay?
So
Well,
yeah, and right now we are actually, well, again, we've learned our lessons. We're taking it slow, but
Hmm.
hopefully in the next few days, next few weeks, there's
Hmm.
actually going to be another, maybe life in motion. And honestly, like right now, the biggest reason, not the only, but the biggest reason why we're doing it is because we do have, I think we're one of the very few, maybe,
Hmm.
places where there's actually more people, former students, actually employees, who from being our front desk personnel actually went back to school to become PTAs, and we actually have a surplus of people. And they're like,
That's good.
yeah, I want to stay here.
That's
I literally was pushing one of our PTAs because I told her, I don't have a place for you yet as a PTA. I don't. This is what you want. She actually was a new grad at that time, a new college grad. During COVID, we asked her if she wanted to, for the meantime, work with us, for front desk, and she said yes because she was bringing her grandma. And she told me, I remember on that first day, I never really imagined myself, working in the healthcare field. Most of her family were working healthcare field, and then 3 months later, she was like, "I think I wanna," like in this passion. I have to tell you something. I think I want to go to school to become a PT or PTA or whatever. And I'm like, sure. So now she's graduated, a licensed PTA. But like I said, I'm like, we are fully staffed. So she went back to actually working for us as a as a front desk person. But I'm like, but I don't want you to be here. We'll go somewhere, and then hopefully we'll take you as soon as we have a place for you. We'll take you back. And then we actually do accept students from Rutgers in our facility. So most of our interns, actually, this really broke my heart because just before I left for the conference last week, one our student was actually, talking to me for some advice, and she said she's very anxious. She said, and I said, why? And she said, because I'm afraid that my prospects for employment are actually getting narrower when I graduate. I'm like, that is, so against what the statistics says, right?
Mhm.
I said, why is that? Because she said, I think because my standards are now much higher. I think now I know what kind of workplace I want. And I'm not sure there's a lot of them like here. And I was like, oh my gosh, I said, I feel like that is I think it's a disgrace. Ours should not be the standard. Ours should not be high. Ours should just be the standard. And
No, marvel in it because it's a blessing that you've created a culture where people want to stay, come back, go do something. So you guys are doing something right. And I'm sure there's gonna be a time where the harvest is gonna be plenty, so that you can employ as many people as you so desire. So that's my prayer for you guys.
thank
Okay.
you.
So
Yeah, if it's in the plan.
yeah, it's his plan. It's his plan. Okay.
Maria, I want to ask you though, as a business owner, specifically in the outpatient physical therapy world setting, how do you see the profession in the next 3 to 5 years? And the reason for my question is there's been obviously much conversation, both in professional, social media, whatever the case may be, about how reimbursement is going in outpatient and how that affects your ability to pay staff, pay yourself, to do those things. So where do you see the outpatient specifically going in the next 3 to 5 years?
I think, okay, I think that there's always great opportunities for outpatient practices, but there's a big but in there. I think though that we have to cultivate within the profession more of us, uh, clinicians, to actually venture into business ownership because I'm going to tell you, they are seeing, okay, social media, the rumors, right? The news is saying all bleak things about physical therapy. But then if you look at where most of physical therapy businesses are at this point in time, there's actually more and more venture capitalists getting into physical therapy as a business. So who are you going to follow? They know actually where the money is, but the thing is, we who are really, right, I feel like the workers, the cornerstones of the professions, are too afraid. I don't know why. We are actually too afraid to venture out there and fail if you must, so you could learn the lessons, and come to think of it. And that was actually really my biggest consideration why we actually we put out our own practice. If you are a practice owner, right, you're really only, if you're a practice owner and business owner at the same time, you really have less overhead because you're already paying for yourself, right? And you actually have, I'm not going to say freedom per se, okay, but really you do have the freedom to practice the way you want to. Okay, and I also think that people doesn't have to be so pressured to grow their business from one to two to three to four to five clinics right away, because life has its ebbs and flows. Like for the longest time, we did not even entertain the thought of um, having another practice. And that's because the kids were young. Growing a practice is like growing a family. We all know that, right? It takes a lot of attention, time. Like I said in the beginning, there's only finite time, resources. And so
Yeah.
we were very intentional on when and where we were actually going to go next. And then it actually pulls us back because we live in New Jersey. The second practice that we actually ventured in was in New York, and
Mm.
the traffic is very horrible. It's just across the bridge, but it takes a good what, an hour and a half, two
Ooh.
hours, yes, one way to actually get to the Bronx. And that's we actually what we realized is that, what, we actually broke our very own rule, of staying closer to home. And what we realized is that it's eating up too much on our time, which also means it was eating up too much time on our families. It wasn't even, I mean, the money was a factor, but really what we tried to bring back was the time that we actually spent more, with doing what we really love the most, which is
Mm.
patient care. Because commuting actually takes you away from patient care, right?
Well, he and I are both in home health, so we get.
A lot of community.
We started our practice actually as a mobile PT clinic. But then, being where we were, we quickly realized this is not possible
Yeah.
because my patient was only what, like 3 miles away, but it could take me an hour to get there because we were in the metro area.
Okay.
So we decided that, what, we're really gonna have to stay put.
Gotcha.
So I would encourage. And just yesterday, Ben and I were actually invited by Rutgers to talk to some students on, private practice ownership. And I would very much encourage, and I am more than we are more than willing to share our experiences, with having a quote unquote successful almost 15 years of practice to quote unquote an unsuccessful one, less than 3 years, because there's lessons there. And what I
Yeah.
wanted to show them that this is what a at the end of the day, we're still alive.
Yes. That like there are a lot of great clinicians, but I also realize great clinicians don't always necessarily make the
Business.
best business owners. So there are a lot of lessons you learn on the fly. I'm still learning a lot, even after taking courses and having mentors and stuff like that. And a lot of us are very afraid of being vulnerable. So you
I
were being very transparent. I'll be transparent too. I tried the expansion stuff. It didn't work,
Mm-hmm.
as well, because as you said, it's a lot of time and resources, even to build and maintain a team. It's hard to divvy yourself up as into so many different parts. And what that experience taught me is that collaboration is probably the key to moving forward. So, with any sort of expansion now, I'm just working on collaborating with other like minded individuals because I've been in a situation where I've had a partnership go bad,
Mm-hmm.
and it does create a lot of self doubt
Mm-hmm.
when things go, because you're like, whew, I thought I was trusting my gut instincts to do something right, and then you're questioning everything after the fact. But I think that's one of the biggest things with us as business owners. I don't believe it in the fake it till you make it. Just tell people as it is. look, hey, this is this. It can be good. It can have its low points. But just keep learning, as Alex said, keep feeling forward. So yeah.
And I think that before we even expand, right?
Mm-hmm.
We this is something that I've also been thinking about is we've transitioned from patient care to people care. And when I say people, patients are people, but right, but on top of people patient care, it's really your staff. It's girl, and to me it's actually much more difficult, because unlike patients where, okay, you do your best, right? You give them, this is what you're going to do, like you're on your own, blah blah blah, and then they go to you, you see them for an hour, right? 2 to 3 times, 2 weeks, once a week, twice a week, okay, however long. But with your staff, you actually need to learn more about them. Not for you to control their lives, definitely not. But you gotta be on top of them, because you also have to take care of them. And you're with them 8 to 10
Yeah.
hours a day. Your life, I'm not saying they encroach in our life and we're encroaching in them. That's definitely not. But
Mm-hmm.
you have to be, this is actually where you have to be everything for them, and again, I think it's a different set of skills. Our
Mm-hmm.
very first hire so many years ago, I think 2 3 years in practice, was also did not work out, because I thought that me showing how to do things the right way was actually enough for the person to learn, and it's actually not. I wasn't good at telling at that time. Now I realize, uh, developing a team is a show and tell skill. You cannot just show them; you actually have to tell them too.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yep.
not show or tell either. So, and yeah, that's the thing, is that I'm not a, I guess because that's the kind of learner that I am. I have to see, I have to observe, and then I can do it. And I'm a self starter.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need a lot of, like, I'll do it if you give me a task. Okay. I'll figure it out. I'll ask you if I need to, but that's not for everyone. You have to consider like different learning styles, emotional styles. I have one of our receptionists for the very first time. I've never encountered such a thing. She got frustrated with a patient. She puts the phone down on the patient, and I thought I wanted to die. But we stuck with her. We I'm like, what, this is the only first thing that, like, right thing that I'm going to do for you. My goal is, I want you to leave a better person when you leave us here. And now she graduated from college. She was just employed by NYU. She's starting in 2 weeks. And when they actually send me her, you kind of like have to do your evaluation. What was that, like, the recommendation
Yeah.
stuff, right? And I was checking off, like, rating her. I was so proud, because I had two memories of her. And I had to remember that this is who I'm grading now. I'm not
Yeah.
grading the person who came in 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But
So
like
so
the
good.
person now. So there, yeah, it's fun. It keeps you young, it keeps you old too. And it makes you old too.
Tell me about it. Tell me about it. Well, Maria, I definitely learned a lot. I hope our audience learned quite a bit as well too. It's always a pleasure. Thank you for agreeing to being on the show. I told you it was gonna be smooth conversation. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yes, of course. I could talk up a storm.
Yes,
And
Yeah.
thank you very
So,
much.
like,
and I'm sorry I missed you at PPS, but I had some stomach issues going on at the time.
no
So,
worries, no worries. We'll party next time.
yeah. So, hopefully, CSM, we can definitely have another sit down as well too. So, but thank you for joining us to restart season part two of season three, and we thoroughly enjoyed your time with us.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you very much, Maria. I really appreciate you. Much success and blessings for you and yours and in the future endeavors.
Take care.
All right. So tune in. We do have an episode next week where we'll be chatting with an occupational therapist who's also a doula. So for any therapist interested in pelvic health, women's health, tune in to our next episode next Tuesday at 8 o'clock. Thank you. Oh, someone say one. All right. Take care, guys.
Thank you, everybody.